In 2005, almost 1 in 5 Americans under 30 owned a home. Today, it's not even 1 in 8. And somehow, that's not even the scariest number in this video. If you're under 35 and you've ever felt like you're doing everything right and still falling behind, the budgeting, the side hustle, the cutting back on takeout, and the math still doesn't work out, I need you to stick around for the next 10 minutes. Because this isn't another millennials are broke doom video. By the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why the math stopped working for your generation, whether the system is actually rigged or just rebuilt without telling anyone, and what you can actually do about it before you turn 40. Let's get into it. So, here's the thing. Nobody explains to you about the American dream. It was never really a dream. It was a math problem. House, stable job, a couple of kids, retire at 65 with enough left over. For about 3 decades, the numbers actually worked. Wages climbed, home prices climbed roughly alongside them, and if you just showed up and did the normal things, you ended up fine. Somewhere around the early 2000s, someone quietly changed the equation and forgot to tell anyone. Since 2000, home prices in this country have risen roughly 150%. Household income in that same stretch grew by less than half that. So, picture a ladder where every rung used to be the same height as your paycheck. Now, imagine someone adds 3 extra feet to every single rung above the one you're standing on, and you don't find out until you try to climb. That's basically what happened to housing. The median age of a first-time home buyer in this country just hit 40 years old. 40. For context, that used to be the age people were paying off their starter home, not buying it. And the home ownership rate for people under 30 has fallen by more than 1/3 over the last 2 decades. Not because an entire generation suddenly stopped wanting houses, but because the entry FE got rewritten while they were still in school. So, when you hear, just save up a down payment, understand what you're actually being asked to do. Outsave a price that's now growing faster than your paycheck, in a market with the lowest housing turnover in 30 years. Because the people who already own homes locked in rates so good, they'd rather never move again. That's not a discipline problem. That's a structural one. Here's an analogy that actually explains what's happening to a lot of people's finances right now. Imagine your income is water pouring into a bathtub, and your expenses are the drain. For most of modern history, that drain was roughly the size of the faucet. Today, for a huge chunk of the country, someone's slowly closing the drain while turning up the pressure on everything pouring in. 3 things are clogging that drain right now, and most people are only aware of one of them. First, student debt is exploding again. Pandemic-era protections ended, and in just the first 3 months of this year, over 2.6 million additional federal borrowers got transferred into default. That's on top of roughly 1 million more who defaulted in the back half of last year. The average person in that group isn't a 22-year-old who just graduated. It's closer to 39 years old. People who were current on their loans before 2020, who got 5 years of breathing room and are now getting hit with the bill and a credit score that just dropped by about 90 points overnight. Second, total household debt in America just crossed $18.8 trillion. Credit cards alone account for $1.25 trillion of that. Third, and this is the one that's sneaking up on people, buy now, pay later. It feels harmless. 4 easy payments, no interest. What's the worst that happens? Here's the worst that happens. Data shows over 40% of responsible users have already paid late on at least one plan. And because these loans barely show up on a traditional credit report, people are stacking 3, 4, 5 of them at once, without even realizing how leveraged they actually are. It's debt that's specifically designed to not feel like debt, right up until it does. Now stack inflation on top of all that. Prices over the past year climbed 3.8%, the fastest annual pace in roughly 3 years. Gas is up nearly 28% year over year. Groceries are up over 3%. Rent and housing costs, another 3.3%. and even the number the Fed likes to focus on. Core inflation, which strips out food and energy, is still sitting almost a full point above their own 2% target. Here's the part most people miss. The Fed's response to that isn't cutting rates to make life easier. It's the opposite. Heading into this year, almost everyone expected rate cuts. Instead, the Fed signaled it might actually raise rates again, which means mortgages, car loans, and credit cards could all get more expensive from here, not less. It's a treadmill that speeds up. The harder you run, your paycheck moves, prices move faster, and the cost of borrowing your way through the gap moves fastest of all. So, is the American dream actually dead? Here's where it gets genuinely interesting, because the data doesn't say what you'd expect. A massive Gallup study released just this month found that only 46% of Americans now believe everyone in this country has a real shot at the American dream. That's down sharply from a couple years ago. But, and this is the part that should make you pause, 69% of Americans still believe they personally will achieve it. People have lost faith in the system in the abstract, while still betting on themselves individually. And younger people aren't necessarily giving up on the dream. They're quietly rewriting what it means. Surveys of people under 30 show the vast majority still find the idea of the American dream desirable. But when you ask them to define it, owning a home, getting married, and having kids rank far below things like financial stability and just being mentally and physically okay. The scoreboard changed. The house with the picket fence got swapped out for not living paycheck to paycheck and actually being able to sleep at night. So here's my honest take, not as a hype line, but as someone who used to sit in rooms full of people whose entire job was reading these numbers for a living. The dream isn't collapsing. It's being renegotiated in real time. And most people haven't gotten the memo that the rules of the negotiation changed. So, what do you actually do with all of this? 3 things. 1, stop trying to win your parents' version of the game. If the housing math doesn't work in your city, the fix isn't try harder. It's play a different board. That might mean house hacking, buying somewhere with actual price-to-income sanity instead of the city you happen to grow up in, or simply renting well and investing the difference aggressively instead of forcing a purchase that doesn't pencil out. The goal is net worth, not a mortgage with your name on it. 2, treat BNPL and credit cards like a loaded tool, not free money. One plan at a time, paid off before you open another, full stop. The entire profitability of that industry depends on you losing track of how many you're juggling. 3, redefine your own scorecard before inflation and headlines do it for you. The data is genuinely clear on this. The people who are doing okay right now aren't the ones with the biggest house. They're the ones with the lowest fixed costs and the most optionality, cash buffer, low debt, income that isn't tied to one employer. That's the actual 2026 version of made it. Here's the honest, slightly uncomfortable truth I want to leave you with. The American dream isn't dying. It's being repriced. And most people are still budgeting for the old price tag. The ones who are going to come out ahead over the next 10 years aren't the ones who out-hustle the old math. They're the ones who notice the math change first and build a plan around the new version instead of fighting the old one. And to make this new plan actually work, you've got to tackle the single biggest expense that's absolutely eating your bank account alive: your rent. You probably think landlords are just being greedy and hiking up prices on a whim. But behind the scenes, there's a hidden system at play that's rigged to keep your rent from ever dropping, no matter what. If you're cutting a check for rent every single month, you need to know the truth that I'm exposing in this video. Click through to find out what's really going on. See you there.